A lot of us can safely say that at some point in our lives, maybe multiple points, we have witnessed ourselves from outside of ourselves doing something which was negative or maladaptive. Maybe it was, maybe you're a recovering alcoholic or drug addict and you watch yourself picking up that drink. Maybe you're in the middle of an argument with your boss or your spouse and an intrusive thought comes in, and that intrusive thought comes out of your mouth, or maybe you commit an act of violence, something like that, and you have this weird, I saw myself doing it. I knew I was doing it whilst I was doing it, and I couldn't stop doing it. And this is something I like to call, or I've kind of coined a phrase, maybe it sounds more glamorous than it is, Kierkegaard's curse. Who's Kierkegaard, you may say? Well, Søren Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher who lived in whenever he lived, a couple of centuries ago. But he defined the self, or sentience, maybe is a better word, is if you were able to have a relation with yourself from outside of yourself as an observer, then that is an indication that you have a self, or at least that you have sentience or something like that. You have awareness of what you are doing. So if you have this awareness, which I think pretty much everybody does, and at some point you have, like I said, found yourself doing something that you knew you shouldn't be doing, or you didn't want to allow yourself to do, but there you were doing it, and you were busy observing yourself doing it whilst you were actually in it and doing it and experiencing it. This is what I'm going on about, this sentience, this Kierkegaard's curse. And the problem is that awareness does not stop the behavior. You'd think it would. You'd think, well, hang on, I'm an intelligent, fairly self-aware human being, and here I am committing some kind of like transgression against myself or somebody else, and I'm aware I'm doing it, but that's not enough. I'm aware it's there, and it's not enough to be able to stop doing it. And then typically what tends to happen is we pile on the guilt, which often turns into shame, or we pile on the shame for ourselves. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I'm not going to be able to let myself off the hook. How can I ever forgive myself for, I don't know, betraying my partner multiple times, or being angry at this, or humiliating someone then, or whatever it was that I did, or self-sabotage somehow, self-destruction, or picking up that drink, or doing that line of doing those drugs when I knew I should have done something else to distract myself away from that temptation at that point. And we can then start to get circular and ruminate and spiral down and home in and zero in on this kind of feeling of shame and guilt. However, Kierkegaard's curse, if you like, this awareness, third person awareness, is also a gift, because it gives you that awareness. So it's telling you, whilst you're not able to change it, at least you're able to kind of reflect on it and go, this needs to change, which is a huge step. If you can do that, I don't want to behave that way again. I want that to be an old, forgotten version of me. I want to have different behaviors. So this awareness, like I said, is the key to your freedom or your emancipation or your liberation from certain behaviors, certain reactions that you might have within the world. How so? Okay, I've already explained a tiny bit, but you need to use it as information. So you take a helicopter view of the situation. You already have done. So now you make a conscious effort to reflect back from an objective standpoint. And you could say, well, they did X, Y, and Z, which made me angry. And then you need to kind of go, why was I angry? What was anger? And I'll do a video on anger, about anger being an umbrella emotion. What was anger? What was driving the anger? For most people, it's some kind of fear. There's some kind of hurt about to happen, and the anger covers over it. Anger is a defense mechanism. So let's say it's that. So I got angry super quick and enlarged myself and rah at somebody and made them feel like shit and made myself feel powerful, because at that point I was scared of something. I was scared of being rejected. I was scared of being humiliated. I was scared of not being good enough. Something crept in and I shot across the front of it. And I'm aware I did this and I behaved in a certain way. Now, actually, I don't want to behave. I want to learn to be able to control this or behave in a different way. And, you know, there are loads of techniques for this, breathing techniques, take a step back, take a pause. It's not always easy in the moment, because once we're triggered, bang, we're off. And it's like the blinkers are on and we're just going to keep running with whatever it is. And it is until we, even when we're aware that we're doing it. There's another way of looking at it. You can look at it, and I sometimes say it's the child at the wheel and the adult's in the back seat. So the adult version of you is taking a back seat. The child version of you has kicked in at whatever age and is using a survival mechanism which is probably quite familiar to you. It's how you dealt with certain things back then and there, and now all of a sudden it's kicking in again because certain events have converged and have now put you onto the back foot, and an old defense mechanism, a default defense mechanism or behavior has kicked forward, or you've allowed yourself, so like, I don't know if it's drink or drugs or whatever it is, you've gone back to getting yourself into a stressful position, and in a moment of weakness, in a moment of not having enough strength, that old coping mechanism has kicked in and you've watched yourself do it. And now you've obliterated your life again, or hopefully not obliterated, but at least you've done some damage that you don't want to repeat. Now, how do you change all of this stuff? Kierkegaard didn't really have particularly, he sort of had an answer to it. I'm going to use him again, and I'm also going to move over to Hume. Sorry, I'll say that clearly. I'm also going to move over to Hume, David Hume. But Kierkegaard said, well, it needs to be an integration of mind, body, and spirit. You need to jump into the arms of God. And that's certainly where, say, for instance, AA and that go with this kind of like not falling for certain behaviors again or not slipping into certain behaviors. But this also applies across the board. It doesn't I don't want this to be a video about addiction, but it's about negative behaviors that you no longer want to repeat. So again, there's this kind of like, okay, mind, body and spirit all need to kind of integrate and start functioning together. And I want something more for myself. I want to be something different. Now, Hume said, you cannot reason your way through things, or certainly reason does not give one motivation. And that's pretty true. It's like with a lot of psychological problems, intellectually, you can understand it. Intellectually, you know what you need to do. But like in my boundaries video, well, I know I need to put boundaries in intellectually, but I don't know how to do it. Hume came across an idea or presented an idea, and he said that passion is the driver of motivation. If you have a passion for something, you will then have motivation to move towards that thing. And reason can help you maybe define some steps that you need to take, because reason in itself is inert. It doesn't make anybody move. It's the same with this. And actually, I will go back to addiction for a minute. Unless you have a reason for not picking up a drink or a passion for a life which the addiction cannot compete with, then you're on very, very thin ice with just reasoning that it's not a good idea for you to have a drink, or it's not a good idea for you to act angrily, or it's not a good idea for you to be resentful, or it's not a good idea for you to descend into, name-calling behaviors or blame shifting or whatever it is that you might be doing, or angry outbursts. Again, reason is inert. You need to start building a life or having a passion for wanting something better for yourself. Now, that's not always easy. So, one way to move around this is to start turning your focus towards things that do kind of ignite you and light you up a little bit, and have passion, start to create that passion, that motivation to act in certain ways. And maybe you have to, physically write down, first of all, what it is that you want, why changing this behavior is going to be good for you, what it's going to bring, what it's going to prevent. to get some kind of, actually, this is going to be good. So that starts to ignite some kind of passion towards moving that way, creating a life that doesn't compete, or creating a life where negative behaviors or addiction problems and stuff like that, because I mentioned them, cannot compete. Then they don't become a maybe, they become an absolutely definitely not. I'm not going to lower myself that way. Now, if you have certain issues such as around like certain stresses, maybe you can reduce the stresses in your life. If there are ways of also learning to control yourself, there are martial arts. So again, it's having a passion for living your life in a certain way, because that life, and remind yourself, this way of living, this way of behaving brings me so much. I don't want to jeopardize that. I don't need to jeopardize that. I have no, in fact, my focus doesn't even go that way. My focus is all this way. And if something comes my way, well, I kind of chew it over, think about it, move past it. The other thing, like I said, which I indicated and I touched on, is getting curious about what the behavior is solving. So what does anger solve? Well, it stops me from feeling scared. It stops me from feeling powerless. It stops me from feeling like the other person's going to get one up on me. What do I get from, I don't know, taking the drink that I shouldn't take, or doing the drugs that I shouldn't take? Well, it stops the noise in my head, or it stops me feeling overwhelmed by emotions. Okay, what do you need to do? So that's what you're trying to solve. So find another way to try to solve it, which is less damaging to you as a person, less damaging to the self. Is going to induce, it's going to reduce you inducing guilt and shame and burying yourself under all of that, and trying to dig your way out of that one. It's going to move you towards that curiosity about what you're trying to solve, is going to give you another key to the life, to leading the life that you want to live, in a way that you want to live it, in a way that you want to conduct yourself, and you want others to conduct themselves around you, and also, feel about you. I mean, one question you could ask yourself is, what is it that I want people to remember about me? That's always a tricky one. Do you want them to remember you as an angry, infantile, temper tantrum person, or as an alcoholic, or as someone who's dysfunctional? Or do you want them to remember you for how you made them feel, how you valued other people, how you were able to be cool in a crisis, how you were able to be calm under fire, how you were solid, reliable, etc., etc.? It's a good question to ask yourself.